Hi, I'm Teresa from Phoenix Gate Crafts, and today I want to talk about fragrance oils versus essential oils in melt and pour soap. So, what is a fragrance oil? Let's start there. A fragrance oil is a synthetically created fragrance oil that you can put in your soap. If you're using fragrance oils, you'll put about 2% to 3% of the weight of your base into your soap. So if you've got a 1 pound block of goat's milk soap base, for example, and you want to fragrance it with, say, Serenity fragrance oil at 2%. So basically, you can calculate this out by taking the weight of your base. So 1 pound is 16 ounces, for example, and multiplying that on your calculator times 0.02 if you want 2% fragrance oil. Then that's going to tell you 0.32 ounces. You can do between 2 and 3%. It's a good starting point. But if you go to brambleberry.com and you've purchased one of the Brambleberry fragrance oils, it will tell you how much you can put in. It'll give you a light amount, a medium amount, and a heavy amount. All you have to do is choose the fragrance oil that you're using, tell them that you're putting it into melt and pour, and tell them how much base that you're using, and they will tell you your options for how much. And you can go anywhere between the light amount and the heavy amount. Though if you're doing the heavy amount, know that you really shouldn't go more than that. And all of this is done by weight because weight is the most accurate form of measure. Now, some of the benefits of fragrance oil, and you're probably going to tell pretty easily that fragrance oils are my preferred method. And I like them because fragrance oils are synthetically made, so they're made in a lab and they're most likely tested to make sure that they're skin safe. And in the listing, when you purchase them, they typically say that they're skin safe. Now, something that you might need to be aware of, you might look for uncut fragrance oil. Now, what this means is that basically, if it's uncut, it means that no solvents are added to the fragrance oil after it's been made at the factory. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a marketing term because you don't need to cut your fragrance oil with anything to make it less strong. You can get cheapo fragrance oils from the factory that have a higher solvent solution. These are typically less expensive, they're lower quality, they're going to have more of a chemical smell to them. And if you don't like that, don't buy that. And if you're getting it like that from the factory, it's still technically uncut, it's just cheap crap. So if there's a fragrance oil you're interested in, go ahead and purchase like a trial size of it and see if you like it. If you don't buy a full size. It's that simple. Not all fragrance oils are solely synthetic. Now, they are at least partially synthetic. They can include essential oils. In fact, the Serenity fragrance oil from Brambleberry, no, I'm not sponsored by Brambleberry, I just like a lot of their stuff. But the Serenity fragrance oil from Brambleberry is a mixture of synthetic fragrance oil as well as a combination of a few different essential oils. And it smells delicious. It's one of the primary scents I use in my Sea Swirl soap, which is at my Etsy shop if you'd like to purchase it in the link down below. And it looks like this. Fragrance oils are also pretty good because they tend to stay in soap for a decent amount of time before they evaporate off. You know, everything kind of dissipates after a while, but if you wrap your soap like I did in plastic wrap or shrink wrap or something, the fragrance typically lasts a little bit longer. But fragrance oils tend to last a pretty decent amount of time anyway. I know some people who wrap them in cling wrap the way I have here, and the fragrance lasts for years at a decent level. They also tend to be more complex fragrances. So you can get single scent fragrances like English Rose or Lavender from Brambleberry are both single note fragrances. But Serenity has about a half a dozen fragrance oil scents. I have one that I got in a trial size that's called Lemon Bar, and it smells like a lemon bar cookie. It's really hard to match that complexity with essential oils. So let's talk about essential oils for a little bit. Essential oils are the more natural option. Now, we're not getting into it here, but I do have questions about where that point where we stop calling something natural is. Because although, yes, essential oils exist in nature, they exist in flowers and other botanicals and are processed and removed by humans. So I question things that are natural, because natural is kind of another marketing term. But regardless, because essential oils come from flowers, they are considered natural, and as such, they're not actually designed to go into soap. And some of them are not skin safe, particularly cinnamon. Cinnamon is a spice, and with repeated uses over time at too high of a concentration, you can easily burn someone's skin, especially if they're sensitive. Another one to be wary of that most people aren't too concerned about, but literally burned my legs, is lemon. And so you need to be very careful with how much essential oil you put in. And they're not soap stable. So whereas fragrance oils are typically added to soap at a 2 to 3% amount, you only really need about half of that for essential oils. You can put up to 2% into a soap base, but that is going to smack you in the face with the intensity because essential oils evaporate. That's actually how you smell fragrance, is the fact that it is evaporating and the scent notes are being released into the air. And that happens much more quickly with essential oils than with fragrance oils, because fragrance oils are chemically stabilized, whereas essential oils are not. So you're going to get a very strong scent at first, and as you leave the bar out, the scent is going to dissipate. It can take a few weeks to a month. It'll be slowed down by wrapping your soap in plastic, but it's not going to halt it entirely. However, you do get very good, very strong fragrances with essential oils, and they are a very popular option. Something to be wary of, though, with both fragrance oils and essential oils is vanilla fragrance. Now, vanilla in fragrance oils isn't actually vanilla. It's not coming from the vanilla plant. And in fact, most vanilla extracts aren't actually vanilla. Vanilla is actually a pretty rare plant, and as such, it gets very expensive having real vanilla in things for either fragrance or for flavor. So the imitation vanilla that you most commonly come across is actually a substance called vanillin, or sometimes it's pronounced vanillin. And I don't know which one's correct. I think technically they both are. I go with vanillin because it sounds more like vanilla. And vanillin is extracted from a hardwood that smells really close and tastes really close to real vanilla. Close enough for jazz, especially if you're baking. I mean, all the best chocolate has at least a teaspoon of vanilla in it, right? So many fragrances like Campfire from Brambleberry have vanillin in it. And the vanillin discolors over time. It might take a few days, it might take a few weeks, it might take a few months, but depending on how much vanillin is in it, vanillin fragrance oil does discolor. A lot will discolor to a dark brown, a little bit will discolor to yellow, but ultimately it will discolor. And there's a couple of ways to combat this. The first one being using a vanilla stabilizer. This doesn't stop the discoloration, though, it just slows it down. So instead of taking weeks, it might take months. Instead of taking months, it might take a year. It just slows it down, though. Eventually, everything does discolor. There are a bunch of different brands of stabilizer from a bunch of different sites, but they all work very similarly and they all have their own individual instructions. But for the most part, however much fragrance oil you're using, you use the same amount of stabilizer. You mix it about 15 minutes before you're going to put it in the soap with your fragrance oil, and you let it sit for 15 minutes all mixed up. That way it can do its chemical thing and work on the vanillin. Then when you're going to add your fragrance oil, you add that mixture. It does make more liquid in your soap, so be aware of that. And it does still discolor over time, so it's not a perfect solution. A better solution, in my opinion, is just to factor in the fact that you're going to get discoloration. So for example, I have my Phoenix Portal soap. This is just a sliver of it. It's one of my oopsies. Also available on my Etsy, but oh, it smells so good. It's got the campfire scent in the outer earthen layer. And campfire discolors to yellow because it has a small amount of vanillin in it. But you'll notice there is no yellow. I mean, there's yellow in the middle, but that was on purpose. There's no vanillin in the edge pieces. And that's because this is brown mixed in goat's milk soap, I believe. So it's already dark enough that any yellowing is disguised. In my Dude soap, which has a gray side and a dark brown side, the same thing happens. It's already really dark. If I had a fragrance oil that was going to discolor to brown, I've already got it brown, I'm fine. So just being aware of that discoloration and making choices based on that really helps. Now, vanilla essential oil has a similar problem in that it's not an essential oil. The vanilla fragrance is extracted from the vanilla plant by extracting the resin using solvents. As a result, it's not technically an essential oil at all. Though you will find it in essential oil packs. And because it's not an essential oil, it's basically a broken down resin, it doesn't mix into carrier oils or into soap in the same way. Not to mention, still being vanilla, it will still discolor, I'm afraid. Now, there is one more option that a lot of people ask about, and that is extracts. This is a vanilla extract, pure vanilla extract, and this is a rum extract. I'll read you the ingredients on both of these. So, pure vanilla extract from McCormick. Still not sponsored. Vanilla bean extractives in water and alcohol. It's got water in it. Never put extra water in your soap. Melt and pour soap is a humectant. As a humectant, your melt and pour soap is already pulling more moisture from the air around it, and the humidity of your bar is already fairly high. By adding extra water, even in the form of a fragrance, you are actually providing conditions for your soap bar to mold. I'm going to talk about that in another video about how soap works, the history of soap, and the history of germs. But just know for now that soap doesn't kill germs, and germs can grow on soap. The rum extract even has water in it. It has alcohol, water, rum, and natural flavors. These are not particularly strong scents. They're fairly weak because they're meant to flavor something. You only need about a half a teaspoon of this to flavor a whole cake, and you only need about a teaspoon of this to help flavor a whole cake. So considering the fact that most soap bases max you out at 1 teaspoon of additives per pound, you're not going to get a particularly strong smell if you use this, plus the chance for it to mold. Just don't use flavors or extracts. This is something that should stay in the kitchen for cooking. Anyway, I hope this clarified a few things for you, and I hope it helped you out. Ultimately, be safe in your crafting so that you can have some happy crafting. Bye.